Welcome to Dear Sandy. I'm Sandy Galiff, a member of the New York State Assembly, representing parts of Northern Westchester and parts of Putnam County. And today we're going to be meeting the new chiefs in the community. And it's going to be a very interesting program talking about policing in Northern Westchester and Putnam County. And I have as my guest first the Peekskill Police Chief, Don Halmy. And welcome.
Thank you very
and
much.
You've been the police chief for
2 months today.
2 months, right. So, but you've been with the police force for a long time.
Yeah, I'll have been with Peekskill for 20 years at the end of this year.
Right. So it's very exciting. Did you ever think that you were going to be the chief, or is that a goal that you had, or?
You know, I think it's a goal that you think about, kind of like winning the Super Bowl or doing things that are just, kind of the top of whatever sport, whatever job, whatever you do in life, you think of the pinnacle. So I think it's something I may have thought about, but it's not something I ever really, I never really thought I'd be sitting in the seat today. So it's really been a whirlwind last couple of months, and I'm very pleased to be here.
Right, that's great. And the sheriff the Putnam County Sheriff, I guess we should do it in that order, Robert Langley Jr., we welcome you to the program.
Thank you.
And you have been the sheriff there in Putnam. It's interesting that Putnam County has a sheriff. I know Westchester County also has a sheriff, but they don't really call it, so to speak, a sheriff. It's more like public safety commissioner and so on. But Putnam has continued, as many counties have around the state, the sheriff. And you've been the sheriff for how many months?
In my 5th month now.
Right. So you are new, but you had been. Give us a little bit about your history.
Well, I originally worked for the Sheriff's Department for 23 years. I started there in 1984, and I retired in 2007. After I retired, I started up my own successful business in security. And June last year, a Democratic committee approached me with my unique qualifications and asked if I would consider running for the seat of sheriff. And given my background and unique qualifications, I accepted the offer, and here I am today.
Right, and it was a little different way of gaining the position than Don had.
Yes.
Don didn't have to go through an election. Well, but
I
you had
kind
to
of
be.
did.
In a sense, you do. In a
Yes.
sense, you do.
Just a much smaller voting group.
Right.
You know,
The voting group is really the Peekskill Council, or
Correct.
any of your communities that the board has to appoint you.
Yes. I I interviewed with the city manager and the city council, and they basically voted on whether or not, or they voted on who the next chief would be. So I was fortunate to come on top there.
So you've both been in the policing business for a very long time. How has it changed over all those years? Are things the same, or are they just totally different? Is the community so different? Robert, what do you were in the sheriff's department so many years ago, and then stopped, then went back. What have you found when you got there? A lot of changing the way people do business, or the public?
Well, I think the basic foundation of law enforcement has remained the same over the years, and that's community policing, being involved with your community. You need that connection from your officer to the community to not only get information out there, but to get information back to keep your community safe. So that's always remained the same. Technology, however, over the course of years progresses so rapidly, and in law enforcement we try to keep pace with it, but sometimes technology is moving faster than our budgets are.
Right. Because it is expensive. I mean, most of the things we
absolutely.
talk about are probably quite a bit of money.
Yes.
So, when we talk about community policing, what do we mean? Walking on the street, driving places, being present. What do we mean by
Well,
that?
My environment is much different than here in the,
Yes,
in the
right.
city. So our officers, if they're out driving around through the community and you see people in the neighborhoods that you're patrolling, just stop, get out, interact with them, talk with them, engage in conversation. You develop that relationship. Introduce yourself, get to know them. Just insert yourself, become part of their community. And it opens up so many different avenues for law enforcement. And again, like I said, that is the key to keeping everyone safe, is information.
Right. And Don, I mean, a city of Peekskill is pretty small. It's not like Putnam County with all these even dirt roads, and many lakes and all that kind of thing. So is it, what have been the changes over the time that you've been in the police force here?
Well, I think that, first of all, when I came here, the city is much different today, than when I first started. There was a lot of problem areas in the city. There were areas that we had to give dedicated, checks to all night long, that we were constantly had to show a real police presence in a lot of different areas throughout the city. Today, that's all changed. We're not, we're not dealing with a lot of the negative, parts of policing that we had to deal with back then.
When we say back then, I guess we're talking
20
about
years ago. I'm
some
thinking.
years ago.
I'm thinking
right,
for me,
right.
and
Right.
one of the things, as Robert said, with technology, how it's changed so much. There's a fear of technology, I think, by a lot of police officers. There was an old school philosophy towards how to do the job, but you really need to, embrace the change, because the change has come and will continue to come. So officers, now we use body cameras, and officers were vehemently against it. Having to change that, having to feel that Big Brother was watching all the time. But I will say that in almost every, if not every single case where we've had to review, someone's body camera because of a complaint, because somebody felt things were handled improperly, every time it's vindicated the police officers. And I think it tells the officer that, I have to do the right thing, because, I am kind of being watched.
Right.
It's kind of like, I think when I was younger, I had a boss that was, he could be overpowering and overwhelming at times, and you always kind of told yourself, he may be looking over your shoulder, so make sure you do the right thing. And I think it's kind of the same way that officers feel that way. And the young officers that come out today, they don't think twice about it. They're
That's
handed
interesting.
they're
So
handed that camera.
Right, they're willing to do that, but somebody that's been there for a long time, it hasn't. I guess
Sure.
that's just, it's a
human
changing
knowledge,
policy.
human
right?
nature, I should say. The big thing too, like with technology, is that when I started, 20 years ago, if something was happening and you needed to go take a picture of it, you needed to run into your house and go get your Instamatic or your 35
Right.
millimeter from a shelf somewhere and take a picture. Today, pictures are instant. Everyone has a camera on them. Everyone has a voice recorder on them. Everyone has access to email, social media, where things are posted immediately. So there's definitely, the feeling that you're constantly being watched. And that can be a good thing, though. If you're doing the right thing, you have nothing to be concerned about.
Let's go back to the community policing. Is it a little different in Peekskill? Is it police officers walking around?
Yeah, I think in Peekskill we're a city, but if you see like signs coming off Route 9, it'll say One Happy Town. It's kind of, we're a city with a small town feel. We know, a lot of the people. We know a lot of the residents. You cannot walk down Main Street or Park Street, Central Avenue, Bank Street in the downtown and not run into people that you know. And we definitely want to have that police presence with walking patrols, with bicycle patrols. We have the riverfront where the boardwalk has been, brand new boardwalk has been put in, basically from it'll be, when it's completed, from Crystal Bay down to the Ansville Trail, the Ansville Circle Park down there. And we'll have officers on bikes down there. And really,
that's a new territory then
Yeah,
that you
yeah.
have to cover.
Of course,
Right, that
of
wasn't
course.
there
And
before.
really, the only access is by bicycle. So it's another reason to have bicycle patrol and more foot patrol, out there to be to be dealing with people.
Right.
And we are active in the schools as well. and it's a lot about just getting your, that positive image, out there.
Right. Robert, do you have the cameras also? Or
We don't have body cameras
You don't have body
at this
cameras,
time. We do have cameras in all our cars, and much as with Peekskill, they exonerate the officers, from false accusations that are made against them, and they really, cameras truly are the friends of the police officers. They're not going and incriminating them every single time. I can honestly say the officer has been conducting himself properly, professionally, courteously, and it's been the person that's made the complaint that was very aggressive.
Okay, well that's good to know. I don't know that all of our police departments have them yet, but it's growing, I think, in number.
Yeah,
Probably.
I think the day will come when everyone has them.
Right.
Right. Talking about, I think Robert mentioned it before, it is very expensive. It definitely is a commitment. It's a budget commitment, but it's one that once you start it, I don't think there's turning back.
Right. So, Robert, are there new areas that you're covering also in Putnam County that might not have been covered 17 years ago or whatever, or has it I mean, here in Peekskill, once we did the waterfront and more people, not just at the park, but people traveling up and down the waterfront, by different means, whether it's walking or biking or whatever, it added another place where people would gather. Are there more gathering
There are
places?
bike trails through the county. I mean, you can go from Connecticut all the way down to Westchester County through these bike trails, and much of that area gets pretty desolate. And much like Peekskill, we have bicycle patrols. They're out there, they're on the trails, and we try to team the officers up together for their safety, since again there are desolate areas, and sometimes we do have a small homeless community, and they'll find that desolate area and set up camp out there. So we want to ensure that those areas are kept clear, and assist the homeless in finding adequate shelter.
Right. Well, that is a problem for all of us, is the homeless population, and it seems to, it grows and then it shrinks and grows again. We've just been having a lot of discussion about Colorado, and when I was in California in December, a lot of homeless, and I haven't quite seen the magnitude here, but are we doing okay in that area with with responses to people that are homeless?
I think that Peekskill has a shelter. We do have a homeless shelter here. So for one, we're attracting the homeless as far as, to give them a place to stay. The opposite of that is when you attract, you have this attraction to Peekskill because of that reason. For some people, when they decide they don't want to stay in the shelter anymore, now they're also in Peekskill and want to stay here. We definitely do not have a problem as far as the homeless community goes here in Peekskill. The one thing, as you mentioned, being in Florida, being in California, it's warm all the time.
Right.
I had been talking to somebody recently, and they were saying where they were in Florida, they saw a lot of homeless people. Same thing, obviously, in California. For us, half the year or a third of the year.
Well, this winter they wouldn't have wanted to be here.
Right, it's pretty cold, so it's not a year-round place that the homeless people are comfortable staying. You'll always have one or two that you're trying to help, that you're trying to find shelter for, but a lot of it is convincing. There are resources out there. There are places for them to go. Sometimes they just don't want to go. That's where the issue lies.
Right. How do we deal with the, how engaged do you get with the mental health issues? Not all homeless have mental health issues, but, when there are people with mental health issues, and we see that every once in a while in the newspaper. We know that there's, been a problem, and you assume that there have been some issues. There was recently something that happened in Mamaroneck, and it's like you realize that there was some mental issues. How do you deal with that? Is this a hard thing to do? You go to somebody's home and you know that there's a problem, or somebody is homeless and there's an issue. Who do you direct it to, Robert? How do you deal with that?
The mental health issue is for me, it's a really unique situation because I also have to be in charge of the jail.
Right.
So as far
Oh,
as
that's right.
the
But-
initial
right.
contact,
The Putnam County Jail.
yes,
County Jail.
the initial contact out in the street, if it is something that requires attention because there's a risk to their own safety or safety of the public, we transport them to the appropriate facility where they're evaluated and they're either committed to that facility or they're released. Okay, that is up to the medical professionals to make that determination. But when they come into our jail, it creates a unique situation. They get the treatment that they need. They get the medication that they need, the proper counseling while they're in our custody.
Right. Mhm.
Now the problem arises with the transition. When they get released back out into our community. It's quite frightening for them. They've been in an environment that's very comfortable. They have a relationship with the counselor that's been helping them with their issues. And now you're putting them out on the street. And all that comfort that they knew, that trust that they know is behind them. What happens is they usually go back out, repeat offend, and they wind up back in our custody. So at this time, we're starting to implement with Cove Care a process where Cove Care will come in, develop that relationship.
That's a not-for-profit agency,
Yes,
right? That
yes, they
works
are.
with families.
So once they start developing that relationship, now they're getting released. So we have a release program set up for them. They have someone they know. They have someone they developed a relationship with so they can continue their care and hopefully not wind up back in our custody. Now the big problem is the aid all goes to the state prisons. All the county jails throughout the state aren't getting the funding that the state prisons are getting
Right.
to deal with mental health. So it's something that we have to budget for, something that we have to bear the expense for
And that's, I think, with all counties, right?
throughout the
All
entire
counties,
state. All
right,
county jails
right.
are not receiving any financial aid from the state. It seems that all that state aid is going into the state correction system for the transition for their mentally ill. We need that at the county level as well.
Okay, I guess you should lobby your legislator, me. I think people do. We just don't have enough resources. Don, you're in a different situation because you have a jail, but you're just a holding cell, and then
We have
everybody
holding cells in
Right.
Peekskill, but that's only for
and then
24 hours.
right,
max.
and then
Right.
everybody goes to Westchester County
Correct.
jail. So you don't do you, so how do you get engaged? People come back to the community, you see them back, and they've done something, they've gone to the county jail. I don't know whether, not all people get treatment. Some people do get treatment if they have mental health problems, but you might see them back in the city again, right, I suppose?
Definitely. There's, an important point that Robert made when he said, that people with mental health issues, the ones that we're dealing with are the ones that they need to be a harm to themselves or a harm to other members of the community. The mere fact that people may be, that may have, whether it's manic depression or bipolar or schizophrenia, these different diagnoses, the fact of the matter is if they're not a harm to themselves and they're not a harm to other members of the community, we can't act as police officers. There is a mental hygiene law where we can act, and we have certain people that we are forced to act on, and that we will contact, the crisis team down at Westchester Medical Center, and they will sign, commitment forms, and we will, pick up certain people if we feel that, there's strong enough issues with them, and we'll take them down there, for treatment. The unfortunate thing is there's a lot of people out there that need full-time treatment. They don't need kind of that, interview for half a day and a lunch and, maybe opportunity to take a shower and change your clothes. They need some real committed care. And, that's just something I think, again, everything's, budget concerns, everything's, in every field, in the public,
Right.
public
We
sector
could always
here
do
that-
more if
Yeah,
we had more money. If we could
exactly.
do more, right?
So yes, we definitely have people that come back to us, all the time. I wouldn't say it's a problem in Peekskill at all, but there are a couple of people. We do have we have a veterans hospital right outside
Right.
our borders, in
Montrose.
Montrose. Yep, and you'll get people, that are from the hospital. You get soldiers. We haven't really seen it much, but soldiers are coming back from the conflicts overseas, and
Right.
PTSD is a real big concern. Something that we have to be trained for, and something that we have dealt with on small levels, but it's something we definitely need to be prepared for.
Right. Actually, as a police officer or a sheriff, you're really so much more than policing. You're kind of like social workers, mental health providers, healthcare. I mean, you
Marriage
really
counselors.
marriage counselors. Oh, if you think about domestic violence, oh my goodness, because I read an article recently about the security of police officers. If you go into a situation with domestic violence, your chances of getting injured are so much greater just with that particular issue. And do we see more domestic violence over the last, are we identifying it more over the last, 10, 20 years? Do you think we have more, or is just identifying it better, or it's risen to a different level?
I personally think that over the years, it's more recognition. We look at events that have taken course. Torrington, Connecticut, I think, was the foundation of the recognition of domestic violence, where a woman fled from the West Coast over here to the East Coast to get away from her significant other. He followed her, he stalked her. The police department over there kept ignoring the calls, and then one day they pull up in the driveway, and there he is stabbing her in the driveway. That was a wake-up call that we need to treat it a little bit more seriously. And the zero tolerance then came into place with O.J. Simpson, with that incident that took place out in
Right. Sometimes
California.
these high-powered cases really bring it to, and that happens in Albany too. We will then pass legislation, whether you like our legislation or not, but we do pass it because we see what's happened. And after the O.J. Simpson case, all these bills about domestic violence that were going nowhere all of a sudden popped up, and they were implemented. But some of it was, training for judges, training for police, training for everybody. What do you look for with the domestic violence? What do you see in the patterns, and it's a hard one, because for a while it was like, how can you go into a private home and try to monitor or determine how people are relating to one another? So,
well, obviously the state legislation has helped with that, giving us more authority in the home in domestic violence situations, whereas in the past something as simple as disorderly conduct was not a violation in the home. But now under the domestic violence law statutes, that now comes into play, and it gives us the authority to remove someone from the home. Again, it's zero tolerance. If there's reason to believe a crime was committed, someone acting in a violent and tumultuous manner inside the home, and there's children in the home, that escalates into a whole nother category. And without that legislation from the state, we wouldn't have as much power to de-escalate those situations by removing someone from the home. So I think overall the arrests for domestic violence have increased over the years because of that legislation.
So that's probably good. I mean, that is good in the long run. Hopefully
in the
we're
long run,
saving
it is
some
good.
lives. Right,
Yeah.
right. And then in other areas, I mean, the opioid experience, the drugs, the marijuana on the street, all of those things, is it growing? Well, we know young people are dying.
Of course.
And not all so young, some of
Right.
them a little bit older than that. How are you dealing with all the drugs and the opioids, and that's tough. How do you find the real drug dealers? I guess that's one of the issues. I mean, maybe the seller, but you're trying to find the person that's supplied.
Sure.
All
I
of
mean,
this.
we have, we live in a community here that's a short drive to New York City, which is obviously a major distribution
It's not even a drive.
point.
You could go on the train.
Exactly.
Did they go on the train?
Of
Did
course.
they go on the
Of
train?
course. You know what I mean? So most of the illegal drugs that are sold in Peekskill, you know, come from New York City. You know, one of the things that we did was, you know, we became part of a task force in Westchester County, you know, where one of our narcotics officers works full time with the task force that is trying to identify, you know, the routes, the distribution points within the county where this is coming from, and he's very active, you know, county, you know, as far as the county. We also have another officer who'd specialized in narcotics that works with the FBI, and that's dealing with a much more, you know, widespread area, you know, including New York City, and they've made some really big arrests on that. We have, you know, in our community, you know, we've seen it. You know, we've seen, you know, the opioid crisis, you know, firsthand. I've seen it myself, you know, firsthand. I've personally administered, you know, Narcan. You know, the drug that can, you know, if done at the right time, you know, can reverse the effects. You know, we carry it with us.
Do all the police officers?
All the police officers on the road carry it with them. Yes. You know, one advantage we have in this city is that EMS is usually arriving at the same time, you know, that the police are. But since, you know, you can get the call when you're in front of a house, you know, we want to be prepared, you know, when we're there.
Right.
And you know, one of the most important things, you know, even with dealing with the police officers, is to, you know, to try to not dehumanize, you know, these people that are addicted. You know, you look at the statistics and where these people, you know, that are addicted to opioids come from. It's from all walks of life. You know, it can simply stem from, you know, a back injury, from a car accident, you know, from, you know, the obvious ways, you know, when you just hook up with the wrong person. But, you know, when people are deeply into the addiction, you know, they tend to become more involved in thefts, in, you know, problems in their houses, in their homes. You know, they become, you know, difficult to deal with by parents, by grandparents that deal with them, you know, and you're constantly fighting this battle to not dehumanize them. I've personally felt, you know, the opioid, you know, crisis has hit my home. My sister's son passed away, you know, 2 years ago from an overdose. So it's something that it can happen to anyone, and it just can't be ignored.
Right. And we have to end, but I know in Putnam County, it's everywhere, right?
Oh,
Putnam County,
everywhere.
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't discriminate. It
no
is
borders.
everywhere.
Right, no borders. I just want to thank both of you so much for being on the program and doing what you do to protect us in our communities, and being so involved. And we want people to understand that they need to know those in public safety because you're there to help them. So I'm going to thank you both so much, and I want to thank the audience. If you have any questions, give me a call at the office, 914-941-1111. Thank you. Thank you for watching. Good evening.